computer. All right, sweet guys. Yeah, so tonight we're going to talk basically just the basics of the spine so that you can get an understanding of essentially how it works and how to make it so that you don't injure it, just from a really basic perspective. So what I want you to do throughout this too is ask any questions in regards to certain exercises, any questions at all you got on anything we do. Basically just jump in there and interact as much as possible. Cool. All right, so I'll just set up the screen share. So we're going to have to go a little bit old school. Well, it's just a bit of pain in the butt, but anyway, so essentially this is your spine. So if you look at it from this perspective, you know, you got your coccyx down the bottom, you got your sacrum, you got your lower lumbar, you got your thoracic, and then you got your cervical spine. So essentially there are different parts of the spine, and what we actually want them to do, so they'll move and flex, and they can move side to side, and they can move fronts and back. Cool. And so different parts of the spine you probably want to move a little bit more. Generally the lumbar spine, you don't really want that to move too much. The thoracic spine can move a little bit more, so there's a little bit more tolerance and a little bit more range for the thoracic spine. So if you look at just a cylinder or a straight up, and look at the spine, so the radio tower, like there's equal tension on every single rope here, which is basically holding it up vertical and making it nice and stiff, okay? But if we were to have more tension on this side and less on this side, what it's going to do is actually pull it over to the side. Cool. And so vice versa, if there's strength on one side, but there's not strength on the other, or if there's strength in the front and there's strength in the back, what it's going to do is pull it out of place. And this is sort of similar. It works in the same way with basically any part of your body. For example, if you're really strong or really tight through the shoulders here, you know, that's going to round your shoulders in. But to make that stronger, you just open up the opposite side. And so this is a way you can start to look at the spine and understand how much core exercises and different exercises that we use can make a big difference to making each rope nice and tight on each side so that the spine is nice and stiff. Cool. So the reason we want to make the spine nice and stiff or make it so that it doesn't have to move is that when it's really stable, the shoulders and the hips can move a lot more freely, okay? So a lot of people will think, you know, like I got real tight hips or I got really tight, you know, hamstrings and stuff. It's potential that the back's actually protecting itself from moving, so it doesn't want to move as much. And what will happen is if you make the spine feel safe, so I was actually practicing this today. So I've had like a little bit of a tendon issue in my hamstring where my butt cheek basically connects to my hamstrings, so my glutes and my hamstrings connect. There's like a little bit of a tendon in there. And so what I was actually doing is, because when I bend forward, like it actually avoids it, so it makes me shift to my side and puts a lot of pressure on my lower back. So what I was actually practicing doing was really squeezing my abs the whole way down, and pretty much all of that pain disappeared and I can move quite freely. So when you look at the spine, what we want to do is make every side of it or every muscle that helps to support that spine basically able to do its job and make it nice and strong and make it nice and balanced so that the spine can be stiff and then the shoulders and hips can move freely to do what they want. And this is where we talk about like mobility and stuff like that. Like, yes, you can do hours of stretching. You can go and do yoga and stuff like that. But probably a more efficient way is actually making sure everything around here is nice and strong and nice and balanced. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yep. For me.
Yeah, cool. So if we look at it from a shearing perspective, cool. If you look at
just one question.
Yeah, go back. Yeah.
Just generally, just if you gets too strong or whatever, does it reduce the mobility at some point? Like if you got too many muscles or whatever?
Really good question. And to a point, yes. So if you're an elite level powerlifter, so someone who is going to deadlift, 500 kilos or squat 500 kilos, the whole idea is to make sure your body does not move. Okay, cool. So essentially, yes, you can get very, very stiff, but in general, most people will get nowhere near that. And in general, like the stronger you get in different ranges of motion, I'll actually go over like mobility in a full topic one day, like in a full thing. But generally, like the stronger you are and the more balance you have in your body. And this doesn't mean like you need to go and, deadlift, 3 times body weight or anything like that. When I'm talking about strength, it's just like the muscles are strong enough to do the job and they're also balanced. So let's say, I'll just throw out some random numbers, but let's say like your QLs or the lower back muscles on this side are a lot stronger than this side. You're going to start to favor different sides and things are going to start to wear out. And so that's why creating equal strength on both sides is really important. And that's where I was talking about the wires. Like if the wires are tighter on one side than the other, then what it's going to do is start to pull you out of shape. And when you pull yourself out of shape, that's when you start to run into problems like your disc bulge, your sciatic, and stuff like that. So taking me, for example, and line of shearers, I've seen very, very similar stuff. I was very, very weak on my obliques and also my hip flexors and my abs around here. And generally that made my lower back on my left side do all the work. And I got away with that for a long, long time. You can actually see the muscles on this side were so much more developed. Like I had a lot more muscle on that side than this side. But that was always the side that got injured because, this stuff here and here wasn't doing the work. So this had to do all the work. Cool. Does that make sense, Carolyn?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. And so, yeah, 100%. Like we don't want to get you as stiff as like, say, a powerlifter, but we want to make sure the core and those wires are really tight on each side so that the hips and the shoulders and that can move a lot more freely. Cool. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, really good question, eh? Like keep firing through those questions. Cool. Awesome. So if we look at it from a shearing perspective, so here we got a few shearers. Cool. And as you can see, like there's quite a bit of tension on this one side. Can you see down here? Like there's a lot more tension on this side than this side. Cool. So essentially all the force at the moment is going through towards this side of the body. And you can even see like how much more the muscles are developed on that side, okay? Cool. And on this side, there's not much here. So what that's eventually going to do is create some problems in the lower back. But then if we were to look at this photo, cool, these guys are really straight over their sheet. So their spine positions are really, really straight. And, their whole entire body is directly over their work. Like even you can see here, like he doesn't have a lot of twist in his body. Like his arms freely doing the work, So he's in a good range of motion where this person here, like pretty much the same position on the sheet, but there's way more pressure on this side. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yep. Cool. And you can actually see like how much less tension there is on this side. So 2 things you can improve here, and I actually learned this from Wayne Hosey. Like if you ever watch a guy like Wayne Hosey shear, he basically just moves in a block. Cool. Same with Stacey. Like they just move straight up and down and they're always facing their work. So their shoulders are square to their work, which is taking a lot of pressure off the spine. So where here, they're not quite square to the work. So all the hip is taking that weight and all the lower back is taking the weight, rather than you got these guys here that are directly in front of their handpiece, they're square on to the sheet. Does that make sense?
Is that not due to their footwork though?
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's also like, that's why shearing technique is so important, but it's also like, it's stuff that you can shore up as well with some strength training and stuff like that as well, man. So that's why like, always be working on shearing easier. So making sure you're getting your technique right so that your spine's in a good position. And then also like strengthening those weak areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense as far as, and as you say, looking around for basically how you're actually correlating to the sheep for your footwork for your spine.
100%, man. Yeah. And so you can sort of see here too, like this fella here, like he's quite rounded sort of through the middle of the back. Cool.
Yeah.
But then through here, he's quite flat. So when we look at the spine once again, like he's pretty much got a natural curve, you know? He might have a little bit more through the lumbar, but most of the thoracic, so most of this part here, is doing the work, which actually makes it quite safe to do, you know? And because he's sort of square onto his work, like you can see his shoulders, he's actually like right in front of his work. So that's going to take a lot of pressure off his lower back. And a lot of shearers, that could just be a really good place to start if you do have a sore back, you know? Cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what do you reckon of those bungees?
Bungees? Like I think Angus Moore, he'll share the first run in a bungee, just to take the pressure off his back in the morning. So if you need it, man, you need it, eh? Like it can be helpful, and it is going to take a little bit of load off the back. So, you know, if you find it's comfortable, but probably my opinion on it is don't get lazy in it, you know? So if you're just using that because you're too lazy to strengthen up your core or improve your shearing technique, well, then it's probably not a good idea. But if you're using it, like say you've got good technique, like Angus is one of the best shearers in the world, but he just says, oh, I like to use it in the morning because it takes a bit of pressure off the back, you know? And he's also started doing the core exercises that we prescribe lately, and he said his hips and back are feeling a lot better, you know? So yeah, it's a bit of both. Cool. So now we're just going to have a look at what happens to the spine. So ideally, when you're in a good position with the spine and you got equal strength from left to right, what happens is you're going to have some nice, your discs are going to basically provide cushioning and support so that you're not crushing them. But if you're putting too much pressure, and this is where, if you got too much rounding, so too much of that lumbar spine is basically rounding, this is where you get things like disc bulges and stuff like that, okay? So this is where the spine is basically rounded forward, cool, too much in that lower back, and then it's pushing out the front, okay? This one here is where someone's leaning back excessively. It's pretty uncommon, but it also can be too, like if this was a side-on view, this is where probably this person, cool, see how there's a lot more pressure going to this side. So if you look at the spine, this is where you get things like, you start to get things like, you know, you get your sciatics and stuff like that, because what happens is the spine will sort of twist to the side, and then you might pinch a nerve or something in there. So doing things like side planks, your farmer's carries, your single arm farmer's carries, to basically bring that spine back to neutral, that's where this stuff can be really, really helpful. And then in regards to like my lower back pain and my hip pain, side planks have probably been one of the best things I've actually added in, because I had a hell of a lot of weakness on one side. And once I started doing that, my lower back just started to feel awesome. Cool. Yeah, any questions on that?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, does that make a bit of sense about where the pressure and where pain can start to come from in the lower back?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely for me.
Yeah, cool. So I guess guys, like I'll answer any questions, but I guess when you start to think about these concepts, you can start to think about, you know, how the body works in regards to keeping that spine safe. So as much as possible, you want to keep the spine in a nice neutral position. And for a lot of shearers, they actually have quite an extended back. So things like your McGill curl-ups, and this is stuff we all put in our training, your shoulder taps, single arm farmer's carries, side planks, dead bugs. There's a whole heap of exercises that you're going to do, because if you've got this one here where essentially you get a disc bulge, what that means is, and I'll stand up so you can see this. So what a lot of people will either have is extension pain, so leaning back, and that's pretty much this one here. So if you get pain leaning backwards, what you got to do is actually train flexion, so the opposite way, so that I'll lift up. So if you can see here, if you got like this big duck part, what you want to do is make sure that's all neutral. Cool. Does that make sense? Yeah. So
Yep.
if you're getting pain going this way, cool. What you got to do is train it so that everything here is nice and tight. And if you're getting pain going forward, so in this rounded position, what you got to train is extension. So glute bridges, McGill curl-ups, and stuff like that. So essentially, when we look at the spine, if you're getting pain going forward or that rounding position, a couple of things, you just want to make those glutes nice and strong so they start to do the work, and also get this core really strong as well. Generally, if you're getting sore on one side, what you got to do is make sure that everything that resists rotation, cool, so that's like your side planks, you make these really, really strong, and that will help to reduce pain, the side to side movements, okay? Does that make sense? Yeah,
Yep.
cool. And so I guess for those of you who are watching this after, or if you guys have any questions, essentially when you're getting these sorts of issues, and like being honest, like I've taken one of the best physios around in Australia to some of our Shear Easy courses, and he sort of looked at everyone sharing, and he's like, man, it's literally like, like you can do the best you can, but at some point you're probably going to get some form of back injury unless you're like super diligent with your homework, so like getting those glutes going every day, getting those side planks, getting those curl ups, making sure that core is activated. But if you do get some sort of back pain or some sort of injury, one of the best things you can do is obviously just jump on a call with us, or take a video of what's causing the pain, and then we can just sort of work out some exercises that are going to help to offset that, okay? But in general, if you're getting pain leaning backwards, you want to train everything that's going to bring you forward. If you're getting pain leaning forward, you want to train everything that's going back. And in terms of back pain, one thing is like you want to do things that want to settle it down. So stuff that makes it feel better. And generally these are the exercises that are the opposite to what's causing the pain. But you also got to slowly build back up by doing the exercises or the movements that cause that pain, for example. So, for example, if you're getting pain moving forward, you can't just completely ignore that movement. At some point, you got to slowly bring it back in so that your body starts to know that it's okay. And you can actually, I learned this from like the powerlifting world. So guys who are, they're deadlifting upwards of, triple their body weight, and they hurt their back deadlifting, what they'll actually do to rehab their back is start deadlifting. Cool. So the thing that's caused their pain, they'll actually do that, but they'll do it obviously at a very, very light weight and with some different parameters, and just being really smart and cautious about it. But what you got to do is let the body know that it's okay to do that movement, because as a shearer, at some point you're going to be bending over a sheep again, and if you just completely avoid that movement because it's causing you pain, then it's going to be very hard to get back to work. So just having a really smart approach, knowing the exercises that you got to do them frequently, but also get the certain movements and slowly bring it back in, and just shooting through either myself or our coaches the videos of your movements so that we can obviously help you with some progressions and stuff like that. Cool. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, so don't buy a box of Voltaren and just go hard there.
Nah, not necessarily, man. Yeah, nah. Well, you can, but you'll probably only be working for another day, I was actually thinking about this, man, and like, so like back in the day, it was like, if you're a shearer, you just got to be tough, okay? And now you've still got to be tough, but you got to be smart as well, eh? So, like, shearing's the toughest job in the world. If you're soft about it, you're never going to survive, But there's a point where you got to be like, okay, me being tough is actually like, fuck, I probably should stop now, because if I keep pushing through, you know, I'm probably going to do myself some long-term damage. And there'll be countless amounts of shearers who've had to stop their career soon, just because, you know, they toughened up. Or they didn't toughen up by saying, hey, fuck it, look, I think this is quite bad, I need to stop. You know, and then they essentially, you know, they just blow it up even more, take their Voltaren, and then, you know, their back's fucked for fucking 6 months or longer, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, like you do some days, like you can't just bloody have a whinge and say, "Oh, my back's sore." Like, it's essentially there is some toughness to the job, eh? Like, you can't just have a whinge, but you got to be really smart as well. Like if you got, you know, if you got any sort of goal in terms of like sharing certain numbers or making money in the sharing industry, if you got a family to feed, like there's no point just breaking your body, you know. So be a bit smart about it, eh? Cool. Sweet, guys. Do you have any questions on that?
No, that answers that question.
Yeah, cool. So does that give you that basic understanding of how the spine works?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
how important it is to actually warm up your muscles in order to support it the best.
100%, man. And so, like, that's how things, like most of our warm-up exercises designed to stabilize the spine. Once that spine's stable, you know, you can do whatever you want from there. But, you know, if you just go and stretch for a start, you might actually be making it worse by making it looser when you actually need to make it a bit more stable, you know? So.
Would just on a kind of a different note,
Yeah.
would you be able to? Would some of these exercises be worth doing for maybe the old pressure as well in relation to Z lifting some bloody heavy weights as well?
100%, man. This is anyone, eh? Like,
yeah.
Humans are humans, muscles are muscles, joints are joints. So if you're just a desk worker, you're essentially in the same position as a shearer, but you know, you're just not moving as much load. You're sitting forward in that hunch position. So, and that's a good thing. If you do have a couple of days off or you have to drive a lot, you know, doing these exercises to help open the body up again is massive. Wall handlers, they're fucking bending over, doing a whole heap. They're throwing fleeces, you know, they're lifting a lot of weight throughout the day and moving a lot. So those exercises that I've got, like those warm-up exercises, even if you were to do it every single run, or at least twice a day, it's going to help out a hell of a lot, eh? So.
But at least Wool's worth jack shit now, so the wall handlers don't have to do too much for the old crossbreeds.
What's that?
Wool's worth jack shit these days, so they can just sweep it straight to the press.
Yeah, that's yeah. But yeah, sweet. Oh, cool, guys. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to give you the basics of like sort of how the spine works, and does that give you a bit more of an insight into like why this stuff is quite important?
Yeah, and how important it is to make sure that you exercise properly as need be.
100%. Yeah, and that's where technique is super important as well. Like you got to have your good technique. You've also got to be doing the right exercises. And this is like, you know, you can go get stuff off the internet. Like you might get a bodybuilding program or a strength program, but in general, like sharing requires something slightly different. And that's why like these exercises to stabilize the spine, but then to also open up the hips and the shoulders can make a big difference. And like the program that you're on, Carolyn, like a lot of accessory movements and you're moving a lot of different directions. You're probably finding that your body's just, all the weak spots are starting to disappear quite a lot, eh?
Mm.
Yeah. You can see you're getting bloody strong, so it's pretty good. But yeah, sweet guys. Oh, do you have any questions on that?
No, you've pretty much nailed it.
This one I texted you the other day, like, how is that? Is there a difference between women and men and like exercises and that?
Yeah, cool. So I guess the biggest differences for women and men, and so the way the hips are shaped can make a bit of a difference, but in general, it's because they've done some studies on this, and they reckon a lot of so this is just for female athletes and stuff like that. So in general, because women start with a lot less muscle mass than boys, and they generally, like for say sports like soccer where there's a lot of ACL tears or knee injuries, they generally reckon like if men don't strength train, they've probably got the same rate of ACL tears and injuries. And for the girls, it's generally because they have less muscle mass. So in general, there is that component to it. So essentially, like for women, it's probably even more important to do strength training to build up that strength and resilience and also a little bit of muscle. But also in regards to hormonally, during your cycle, there's different peaks. So in your when you're about to have your period, you're actually at a higher risk of injury, like quite a lot higher. So sometimes with that, it can pay to, you know, like either decrease your training load or potentially like just work on a lot more recovery stuff. It all depends on how heavy and how much that part of your cycle affects you as well. But in general, most women, female athletes, they'll find that the more they train, the less their symptoms and stuff are. But in regards to like hip structure, yeah, it's pretty much the same. It's just get your glutes strong, get your core strong, and it's pretty similar. Like in general, like you're always going to get differences between body shapes or like, you know, hip structures, no matter whether it's male or female. But the same rules sort of apply, you know. So get that flexion core strength, get your glute strength, and then make sure you're getting a whole heap of anti-rotation strength. So stuff like farmers carries, all of that sort of stuff makes a big difference. Hey, does that help?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And in general for girls, like it's more the menstrual cycle that's going to cause the issues, and just that lack of muscle mass. And so generally with any female athlete, we just try to put muscle on them for a start, because it's bloody hard to actually do because of lower testosterone and the ability to grow muscle is generally in women a lot lower. So normally we put them through like a hypertrophy phase where the goal is to actually increase the muscle of the hips and the legs and the shoulders and the abs, basically everything. Yeah. And this is why I always go with strength first. And it's not, you know, it's not go and be a power lifter or anything like that. It's just get the body strong from all angles, and then you're reducing the risk of injury quite a lot. And in general, like a lot of shearers will have, you know, one leg really strong. Generally, if you're a right-handed shearer, your left leg's going to be really strong, which means your right leg is a lot weaker, which means your hips are going to be out and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's why lunges and stuff like that. And it all ties into this. Like you've got those wires going off in each direction, and you just got to make them strong all along the way. Cool. Sweet, guys. Does that help?
Yep. No, it was good.
Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah, sorry. So
don't forget leg day in the old gym, eh?
Don't forget leg day, bro. Yeah. And it's also too, man, like if you're doing it correctly, like with your lunges and stuff, it's going to improve your flexibility a hell of a lot, you know? So yeah. Sweet, guys. All right. Well, I'll call it there. If you got any questions, just shoot them through on the group. I'll put this recording up on YouTube later on. But if you think of anything like later on, just hit me up, okay?
Right.
No, that's cool. Thank you.
Sweet, guys. Have a good one, eh?
Cheers.
Yep.
Bye.